friends, Chubby Meeple back with another Kickstarter preview for you, and today we're going to take a look at Bad Maps. Now this is from designer Tim Armstrong, featuring the art of Kristen Pauline, and published by Floodgate Games. This game's on Kickstarter now, seeking funding. Let's jump over to the table. I will give you a brief overview of how the game plays, and then we'll come back here and I'll give you my thoughts on Bad Maps. In Bad Maps, players are going to take on the role of pirate captains who have basically deployed minions to the island and are going to be giving directions to these minions in the form of programming their movements. And they're going to be trying to guide these minions to obtain the treasure in the center of the island, designated by the X that you see in the center of the island. So you have 4 minions on the board. There's a blue, yellow, a white, and a red minion. And essentially what's going to happen is each player is going to be their own captain. So in this case, we see the green captain. There's a basic side with just one special ability. And on the other side, there is an advanced ability. So after you've played a couple of times, you can step up to the advanced version of the game, and each captain will have their own kind of passive ability in addition to being able to use their spyglass token. So the captain, everyone will have their own captain card. You'll also give a spyglass token to each captain. You'll be able to use the spyglass once to look at a face-down map card. And every captain also has their hand of cards. There's 9 cards here. All of the cards are the same, regardless of which captain you're playing. There are cards that allow for movement, which are going to be used to move the 4 minions around the island. And then there are 4 directional cards that will be used to turn the facing of the minions, either north, south, east, or west, that you see here. Now, for the purposes of this video, if you'll notice, north is actually this direction, and then east, south, and west, you can see the designations on the board. It's just the way I have it set up on the table here for camera purposes and for ease of getting things around. So north will be going that direction, or if you're looking at the video, to your left will be our north direction. So essentially what's going to happen here is you're going to have a series of objective cards here. So there's a deck of cards, round 1 and round 2. These are the objectives that you're trying to obtain. Round 2 is going to score you, these are how you score essentially your victory points during the game. Round 2 is going to score more points because the island's going to get filled up with some more pitfalls. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to navigate. But essentially what you're going to do is we're going to shuffle up the round 1 objective cards, and we are going to deal 4 objective cards to each captain. So let's say we deal 4 to our green captain down here at the bottom of the board. And it's important to note the colors on the side of the board are pertaining to the minions, not to the captains. That's important to note because there are going to be some things going on. So we're going to deal 4 cards to each captain from the round 1 objective deck. Each player is going to look at their objective cards, and they're going to choose 1 card to discard face down. And this is essentially setting up the goal that you're going to try to achieve in round 1. So I have this card would score me 3 points if the blue minion gets first place, meaning he's closest to the treasure at the end of the round. If the gray minion gets first or second place, I'll score 2 points. And then I've got 2 cards here that are exactly the same. If the yellow minion gets first or second, I'll score 2 points. So we'll discard one of those since we have a duplicate. Every player is going to do that. They're going to discard down to a hand of 3 cards, and they will eventually, by the end of the round, you're actually going to be discarding a second card. So you'll actually end up at the end of the round with only 2 objective cards in your hand that you can possibly score. Once that's done, you'll determine a first player, and they will be given the starting player token, and then play will proceed clockwise around the table from that player. On a captain's turn, or on a player's turn, they will take a card from their hand, and they're going to play it on one of the 4 minions in their number 1 slot, or if the 1 is filled, they'll move to the 2, and so on and so forth. And this is going to proceed around the table with each captain playing 1 card at a time until all 4 minions have all 5 of their spaces filled up. And then we will reveal cards and program. Now, there is a deck here called the Blackout deck. This Blackout deck, it tells how the cards are to be played. So this is slots 1 through 5. Slots 1, 2, and 5, in this case, those cards will be played face down, and cards 3 and 4 will be face up for everyone to see. So that adds a little bit of a twist to how the cards are. There's some hidden information there. And so with the cards we had, the objective cards that we selected, right now I'm holding blue minion in first place, gray minion in first or second, yellow minion in first or second. So The red minion I really don't care about in terms of my objectives, though someone else might, so I want to pay attention to what's going on. And again, all 4 minions will have 5 moves programmed before before the round is over. So the red minion, even though I don't care about what that red minion is doing, he will still get 5 cards on the red side of the board. So as the green captain, I'm simply going to take one of my cards, either changing a direction of one of the minions or forcing them to move either forward or backward a number of spaces based on the card. So the directional cards, north, south, east, and west, whichever letter is highlighted in yellow, that is the direction we're going to turn that minion to face. There are cards that move the minion backwards. There's one card that moves him backward 1 space. There's also a card that will move that minion backward 2 spaces. The other movement cards here will all move forward 1 space, 2 spaces, 3 spaces, and you actually have, so you have 5 movement cards, 1, 2, and 3 spaces forward, 1 or 2 spaces backward, and then your 4 directional cards, north, south, east, or west. So I would take one of these 4 cards, and we'll say, looking at my objective cards again, we want the blue minion to be first place, meaning we want this blue minion to be closest to the X or on the center of the board if we can. So let's just have our blue minion move forward a couple of spaces. So we're going to have him move forward a couple spaces because this arrow indicates his area of movement. So we're going to play a card face down in the number 1 slot. It now will play, a play will then move to the player to the left clockwise. We'll say it's the purple captain. The purple captain's going to take one of their cards, either changing the facing of of a minion or having them move. And I'm just going to pull one randomly out of here. And we'll say that they want the purple captain wants the yellow minion to do something, some kind of movement. Now looking at that card up there, we know he's moving, and we know the yellow minion is facing east. So this yellow minion will either move 1, 2, or 3 spaces east, or 1 or 2 spaces toward the west. When moving, minions can fall off of the island. So if this minion were to move 2 spaces backwards, they would fall off of the island and simply return to their start space. They can also fall into pits. Now this wall on this side of the pit means this is impassable, so if a minion were here and a movement card were to cause them to move this direction, they would not be able to move. However, if our yellow minion had moved back a space and someone had turned and had told them to move forward, they could fall into the pit, and it's exactly the same as falling off of the island. They simply return to their starting space with their starting orientation in play. And then play will continue from there. As I said, this is going to continue around the board with cards being played following the directions. So we have your face down, face up. So our yellow player is going to play one face up. And I'm just throwing cards out here randomly. The green player plays one. Purple throws one out. Yellow throws one out. Green will throw one down here. And this is going to proceed until all 4 of the minions have cards in front of them. Now that we have the programming actions played, all of our programming cards are on the board. You'll notice all 4 minions have 5 cards, so they're going to take 5 moves. The next thing we'd have to do before we begin resolving those movements, though, is to each captain will take a look at the 3 objective cards that they still have in their hand. Remember, we were dealt 4, we discarded 1, and we're going to look at the programming that's been done around the board and choose one of the cards to discard before we begin actually going through the motions of programming and moving the minions around. So we look at the programming. Let's say we give up on the yellow minion, we just discard this card. It goes to a discard pile, and now we're looking and hoping that the gray minion ends up in first or second place, or the blue minion ends up in first place, and we could potentially score a total of 5 points. Let's see what happens when we resolve the movement card. So we're going to begin with the blue minion. We're going to turn up the card if it's not already revealed. In this case, it's not. We're going to flip it over, and we're going to carry out the action. The blue minion is going to move forward 2 spaces. We then move, before we do the rest of these cards, we move 1 minion clockwise and reveal that first card. So the purple player here has played a card, moving the blue minion backward 1 space. So we move the blue minion backward 1 space. We do the same with the gray minion. The gray minion here, his card, the gray minion's card says to move forward 1. So we're going to move the gray minion forward 1. And then we come down here to the red minion, who is also moving forward 1. So we move the red minion forward. We're now back to the blue minion. We start turning up cards. Blue minion turning to the north. He's already facing the north, so nothing happens in that case. The purple player is going to have the yellow minion turn to the south. So the yellow minion is now turning to the south. And actually, I just realized I did something incorrect. This moving backwards should have been the yellow player moving back one, then turning to the south. So our blue player is still here. So I corrected that. I caught myself. It's important to pay attention to the colors that you're looking at here. And then we also move these slightly off of the board to indicate that they've been resolved, just because as we go around the board, you'll notice some of these are face up, so you can't just go by which cards are face up. So we go up here to the gray minion. The gray minion is going to move forward 3 spaces, so 1, 2, 3. We come down here, red minion's going to turn and face the west. The red minion's already facing the west. And this is going to continue around the board until all minions have completed their movements. Now we look to see which minions are first place, second place, third place, last place, and so on and so forth. So we count spaces from the treasure in the center of the board. We have 2 spaces to our red minion. We have 2 spaces to the gray minion, 3 spaces to the yellow minion, and 4 spaces to the blue minion. So red and gray are tied for first place. They're also technically tied for second place, but they're tied for first. That puts our yellow player in second place and our blue player in last place. When scoring objective cards, there are a couple of important things to note. First of all, any minions that end the round on their own starting space are disqualified and cannot score any points. So any captains who are holding blue objective cards, as we held on to, if the blue minion gets first place, they score 3 points. The blue minion is not eligible to score points, so any of those blue minion objective cards are simply set aside. They can't score. Captains are then going to look at the cards that are in their hand. In our case, we just threw away the blue minion because they ended on their own start space. And you're going to score points if the condition on your card is correct. Now, it is possible to score both of the objective cards still in your hand, but one of the important scoring rules is that if I had held onto 2 cards that both scored the gray minion, I can only score one of those 2 cards, and it's my choice. So it makes sense as you're discarding objective cards to hang on to a couple of different colors so that you could potentially score both of them. In this case, we score 2 points if the gray minion gets first or second place. In this case, our gray minion tied for first place, which are friendly ties, so we do score the 2 points. We simply place this face up in our play area. And we're going to do the same for the other captains. They're going to look at their objective cards as well and see what they came up with. So if we have our captain over here looks at their cards, the blue minion again is disqualified. If the red minion gets first place, they score 3 points. Well, the red minion, as we said, is tied with the gray minion for first place, and they are friendly ties. So this captain over here on the left-hand side would score 3 points there. So we set that into their score area. And then we take a look at the third captain, who takes a look at the 2 objective cards they have left. If the red minion gets last place, not on their start space, they score 3 points. As we discussed, the red minion is tied for first, so they don't score that. If the yellow minion gets first place, they score 3 points. The yellow minion did not score first. Our first place minions are the gray and red. So this player over here is not going to score any points. Our yellow captain doesn't score any points for their objectives. They'll simply get discarded and set aside. That is the end of the scoring for round 1. Setting up for round 2. Round 2 plays exactly the same, so we won't do anything like that. There are a couple of differences, though. When you go into round 2, the first thing you need to do is, if there is a minion that is not on their own start space and they're not on the treasure space, we need to replace that minion with one of these pit tokens. And you determine the facing of the solid dirt wall by setting that opposite of the direction the minion is facing. So for our red minion, who's facing west, we're going to place the dirt facing the east, and then we're going to return our red minion back to their start space with their starting orientation. We're going to do the same for the other minions, so we put a pit token here where our gray minion was, with the wall facing the opposite direction. And then there's a pit token here where our yellow minion was. And now everyone is in their starting space, ready to go for round 2. We're going to return all of the programming cards, so all of the movement and directional cards are going to get collected and returned to the captains of those colors. So the green player is going to get their cards back, purple will get theirs back, yellow will get theirs back, so on and so forth. We're going to draw up we're going to basically turn this card down. We're going to turn up a new card for round 2, so there's a new way that the cards need to be played. So in this case, cards 2 and 3 will be face up, everything else going face down. We will shuffle and deal just like we did before. We're going to deal 4 cards from the round 2 objective deck to each player. So we'll take the top 4 cards here just to show you what these are. It's the same conditions, it's just the point totals are a little higher now, because now it's a little more treacherous to get around the island. You have more pits that are out here. You could potentially have 8 pits. We ended up with 7 because our blue minion ended up on their own start space. Again, the players are going to look at their cards. They're going to discard one. We're going to do the programming where we play the cards face down, and then before we resolve the maps, each captain will discard a second card, leaving them again with only 2 objective cards for round 2. At the end of round 2, you total up points. Whoever has the most points is the winner of Bad Maps. So that is Bad Maps, again published by Floodgate Games, designer Tim Armstrong, with art by Kristen Pauline. And what do I think about this game? This game is a very simple programming game. It's really simple. It's probably one of the most simple programming games I've played. It's not overly complex. I really like that. It's a great introduction for folks who may not be familiar with programming games and how they work. It's a great introduction to that because it's very light, and it's an easy thing to explain that, hey, you're going to play cards. They're going to move these 4 pieces around the board, and then we're going at the end of those 5 movements for each of the pieces, we're going to see where everybody ended up. And of course, you can plan it, which I enjoy. I like being able to kind of plan things, but you don't know what the other players around the table are going to do and what objectives they're going for as well. So it gives you that aspect of, okay, I want to move this blue minion, 2 spaces forward, and I want to turn him, this direction, move him 2 spaces forward so he'll land on the X. But that's only 3 moves. There's still 2 more cards that go in there that the other captains are likely going to play. And so that's going to affect things. So you kind of have to plan for that a little bit. I really like when the programming is going on, the aspect of some cards being played face down and some being played face up. That gives you some information as to what these minions are going to be doing as they're moving around the board. And what I really like is that even the cards that are face down, in other programming games, if a card is face down, you have 0 idea what is happening. With Bad Maps, it kind of flips it on its head a little bit and gives you a little hint of information. So looking at the back of the card, I can tell that the blue minion's going to turn and face some direction. One of the 4 directions is where that minion's going to face. Or I can tell by the arrow on the back of the card that minion is moving, either forward or backward. I don't know how many spaces and I don't know the direction, but I know they're moving. So that helps me plan a little bit. But it also introduces a little bit of a bluffing mechanism, because now I could see you move that red minion 2 spaces off of their start space. They move forward 2. Now a simple 90-degree turn and another 2 spaces. They're on that red X in the center of the board. So maybe I play a face-down directional card that makes you think I've changed the direction in, that you wanted it to go. And so you play a movement card, and now suddenly I didn't change the facing direction of that minion at all. They're still facing the exact same direction they were facing before. They're moving in the same direction as opposed to turning like you thought. So being able to bluff a little bit with how I'm playing the cards. The game, as far as replayability, there's a considerable amount of replayability here, because the blackout deck is going to switch up how those programming cards are played, because as you play the game, you're only going to see 2 of those blackout cards, because you only play 2 rounds before you do your final scoring. And so you're going to have one round where you're playing the cards a certain way. The second round, you're playing the cards another way, a different combination of face up and face down. And if you're playing with 2 players, there are some other cards that get mixed in. You use the 2. There's actually a 2-player deck of blackout cards you use for a 2-player game, and that actually dictates the type of card that gets played in certain squares. So it'll actually tell you have to play a directional or you have to play a movement card in slot 3, for example. So, but I like that because you're only seeing 2 of those cards. And there's 10 or 12 of those cards or 14 cards in that deck, so you're only seeing 2 of them. So the replayability is very high. The objectives are going to change up each game, so your targets are going to change. So now I'm playing, maybe one game I focus really heavily on the blue minion because those are the objective cards that I've kept, and then the next time I play the game, I'm focusing on the other minions because I'm not drawing any blue objectives at that. So I really like that aspect of the game. Presentation wise, components are great. Nice thick tiles for the minions and for the pit tokens and for the spyglass tokens. They're good thick component quality. I really enjoy the art, the overall art and look and feel of the captains and the pirates and the minions that you see. It really does a great job capturing the overall feel of the world, and it's cute art, but it's not overly cartoony, but it does a great job of conveying that this is a lighter game. It's not a terribly heavy brain burnery game, though it does still offer some good depth of strategy in which card you're going to play and which minion you're going to move. And hey, I want to move the yellow minion this turn, and next turn I'll play a card on the blue minion. Well, now the other 2 captains have played on the blue minion instead, and so now I've got to figure out what to do to compensate. So overall, great game. drop your questions down below in the comments section. I'm happy to answer those as best of my ability. If you're watching this on the Kickstarter page, I definitely encourage you to check out more information from the other videos that are here, the other information on the page. And if you're looking for a light programming game, maybe you want to introduce someone new to your game group, or even younger kids to programming, this is a great way to do it, and this would be a great Kickstarter to check out. So until next time, friends, keep gaming.